Hey everyone, welcome to another session of A Day in the Life of a BA. I'm James, the President of IIBA Ireland, and I'll be your host today. At IIBA Ireland, our mission is to support professionals by sharing knowledge, common terminology, and practical insights into the work of business analysts across different industries or domains. And that's the whole point of this series, to give you a chance to hear directly from BA professionals about their typical day. Each month, we invite BA professional to share their personal journey, highlighting the approaches that they take, the technologies they rely on, the tasks that they do, the tools and techniques that they might use, or even the challenges and successes that they have encountered within their industry or domain. So whether you're considering a career in business analysis, already working alongside other BAs, or simply looking to deepen your understanding of the role, today's session is designed to give you that clarity, confidence, and a shared language for working effectively with business analysts. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Linda and Julia from BA Life, who will give a behind the scenes look at BA Life 2026, from the first idea to the day itself. They'll share how BA tools, techniques, and mindset are used to turn BA Life into a successful community event, along with a preview of what's actually coming this April. Throughout the session, please feel free to turn on your cameras, and you're more than welcome to interact with other attendees in the chat. So please feel free to do so. So without further ado, Linda and Julia, it's over to you.
Thanks, James. Welcome, everyone. And here's what we're going to look at today. So there's a few BA techniques that we use. So we're going to look at some gap analysis to identify the need. And these things are just a flavour, really. We're going to talk through some quick vision work that we did, facilitation and stakeholder management, and really how we use implementation, test and learn to improve our conference, and the good old process modelling. And we celebrate the power of being a BA nerd. I'm certainly one, and I hope there's a few other BA nerds out there as well. But before we get on to that, we're going to do some introductions of Julia and myself. So I've been a BA for over 30 years. I've worked in both the private and the public sector, and I've also done some volunteering with IIBA UK up here in Scotland. And in 2019, I was very honoured to win the BA of the Year award. And that kind of inspired me, or gave a spark for me to pull together a group of BAs, and we became the founding members of BA Life, and Julia and I are now directors of BA Life. And the other things about me are that I'm not only the owner of a Corgi Jack Russell Cross, as it says on the screen there, but I am also married. I've been married for 30 years, but of course the dog always comes first. And he is one of the BA Life mascots after all. And the fun fact about me, it's not so much fun for some people, but it is my escape space, is that I run half marathons. The other thing that I was thinking about me that people probably don't know is that when I travel, I do write some quirky travel logs or blogs, but I haven't really had that much time to post those recently because BA Life has been very busy. Julia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Lovely to meet you. As Linda said, my name is Julia. I've been a BA for about 20 years in various sectors such as financial services, utilities, and not-for-profit. I have had a lot of experience with IIBA as the organisation as well. I've chaired IIBA Scotland for nearly 3 years, and then I moved on to be IIBA UK Community Director. I've also participated several times as a mentor in IIBA UK's mentoring programme, and I loved helping people get to their next level in their career. But I have been a mentee myself, so I have seen it from both sides. Like Linda said, I'm a co-founder and director of BA Life, which was started in 2019. I've spoken several times at the conference itself, and Linda and I jointly run the very successful What Would a BA Do podcast, which is held weekly. At the end of last year, I won Scotland Women in Tech's Unsung Hero Award, which was a huge surprise, but absolutely wonderful and a lovely honour as well. In the background, I've got a very understanding husband. I've got 2 grown-up sons in their mid-20s, and I have 2 cats. You might see Eric on the call. He likes making an appearance. And Bayo, the grey one, is the other mascot that you'll see on the podcast with Elmo. That's me.
Did you do your fun fact, Julia?
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. Fun fact, for charity, I did 5 tandem skydives in one day, and I raised nearly £5,000 for the Mental Health UK charity. So, moving on. So you might wonder, what is BA Life? And I've put a question in the chat just to see if anybody has heard of BA Life before today's session. What we are, it's a virtual conference for business analysts, and it can be accessed globally with wherever you are. But it's quite unique because it's created by BAs for BAs. We don't outsource it to an event provider or anything like that. Although we do enjoy anybody who has either BA in their skill, their role profile. It could be UX, product owner, customer journey manager, and tester, anything like that. As we all know, there's a variety of BA role names out there. But the key thing is we're all very passionate about business analysis. Like Linda says, we're all kind of a bit of a nerd at heart. And the key thing is that we always like spelling business analysis or analyst with a capital B and a capital A. We feel it deserves that kind of professional recognition. But the main thing is we're quite quirky and we like to have fun. You might have seen that if you follow us on LinkedIn. We've done an early bird promotion recently that had lots of film posters that were different parodies on bird puns. And we've also created a music video that's a bit of a BA anthem that was created for Global BA Day 2024. You can find that on LinkedIn as well, but it's also available on Spotify and other good music streaming services. Get that plug in there. So although we work hard, we know how to enjoy ourselves as well. So next slide, please. So we're going to cover a few things over the course of this presentation. So we want to explain a little bit how we started, what's our origin, how we're using those BA capabilities and skills, how we've actually used that to create the event. And so we'll show you what that journey is from that idea right through to the end, but then also how we use those skills and how we take them back into our day jobs. Both Linda and I do have full-time jobs that we run on the side. We're a bit like James. We do this as a hobby in our spare time as well. And then we're going to round off just to give you a bit of a preview of what to expect at BA Life 2026. So let's move on.
Yeah.
Back to you, Linda.
Just going to go to the origin story, but before I do, I like Julia's slight slip up of the tongue where she said, take back to our day jobs that we do on the side. It does sometimes feel like that because BA life is almost a full-time job. So our origin story. So when we started BA Life, it was started as the idea was for a single day conference in Scotland and the North for BAs, and we'll kind of touch on that a bit more in a little while. BA Life is actually an acronym. It stands for Business Analysis Learning and Innovation Festival. Way back, it stood for Festival Edinburgh. And people don't always understand that because BA Life has got a life of its own. It kind of has a meaning for people now as BAs have a life that's developed a life of its own, that kind of thing. We also wanted to create something that was affordable for individuals and companies. So by that, I mean that we wanted something that the market for those individuals like contractors, I'm a contractor, that they could afford it, not just the big corporates that can afford to send people on training. And we wanted something that was created and run by BAs because BAs know what BAs want to do. Um, so how we got started. So BAs as stakeholders, this was a great one. If you've ever had a room full of BAs, it can be quite tricky to get them past the analysis stage because they all want to analyze something until it's kind of analyzed to death. But it was interesting and it was good. We had quite a lot of face-to-face meetings where we worked through a number of things that we felt we needed to put into place. So the first thing was facilitating workshops and understanding what our gaps were and what our problems were. So the first thing we needed to identify was the gap in the market. And that was two gaps really. The gap in the market for a conference in Scotland and the North, because there's a lot of conferences worldwide, and there is, of course, the amazing conference that is down in London that was a big face-to-face conference. But that's quite difficult for people to get to. If you're traveling from Scotland, it can be quite pricey, and London prices to stay at are quite costly. So it's not always affordable for people in Scotland to travel to, or from the north of England to travel to. And as I've said, we spotted a gap in the market for those individuals who are self-funding to go to a conference. So we did some gap analysis around that using good old BA techniques. And we did some further research in those areas and found out that a conference was viable. Once we'd looked at some of that, we then had the big problem of what snappy title would we give this conference? What name would we call it? And we also needed to do things like give ourselves a vision. So we started with a vision statement and we used the quick vision statement technique to drive out our vision. And that vision also gave us some key words like learning and innovation, which was brilliant. And so having done that quick vision technique, we had the vision and part of our name. But part of the name wasn't enough. It gave us learning and innovation, but it didn't give us a snappy acronym that we could use. Then we looked at where we were coming from. So we were coming from Edinburgh, which is the home of the world's largest international arts festival. So we thought, well, rather than calling it a conference, we could call it a festival. It's sort of similar to a conference, but it celebrates business analysis. So then we had Business Analysis, Learning and Innovation Festival, but that still didn't give us, we still needed something else to turn it into a snappy acronym. And it was obvious if we added E on the end, we could call it Life. And that's where Edinburgh, our home, came into it, BA Life. So then we had the gap, we'd found the gap, we had the name using a couple of techniques. And the other thing that we needed to do was really to understand what problems we would face if we were to do this ourselves, because, you know, we could find speakers ourselves, but that is just, although it's a massive part of what we do, it's still one part of a conference. The conference down south, for example, that has IRM that organises the whole thing. It organises the venue, it organises everything. So becoming an events organisers is quite a big thing. Julia and I had both seen it before on doing IIBA events, but that's one small event each month. This was taking it to a whole different level. But we did have people we could talk to about this. So I was lucky enough to work with the people who created Lean Agile Scotland. I knew the people from the big UX online events. So we tapped into their expertise and what pitfalls and highlights you could expect from running the event yourself. So we did a lot of research and we came up with some problem statements and some opportunities that we could tap into. So using all of the BA skills that you would expect on a project to try and find out which direction we needed to head into. And that is what really gave us the kickstart. So that first iteration of all those examples took quite a bit of time, but we had a good basis of research in that information. Julia, over to you.
Yeah. So as Linda said, we were merrily, trundling along, working all this out, getting super excited. We had the event, the venue booked. We knew what we were wanting to do. And then, of course, COVID happened, as it did to most of the world. So we were all forced into lockdown. All the plans were put on hold. We even kept the date at the venue for another year, thinking that, oh, well, we might be able to do it next year instead. But what we found is that in the second year, people were just coming out of lockdown, and even some countries were still in lockdown and weren't even traveling. So, of course, we did what all BAs are good at. We pivoted and we looked into going online instead. And we researched different platforms and what did we need it to do for us and things like that. So we found a platform for us. But because it was our first time and we weren't really sure what we're doing, we actually got all the speakers to record their presentations. And it was easier just to stream them as recordings rather than to do it as a live streaming like we are today. So it was much easier for us to organize. But as you found out later, we do a lot of feedback and we realized it wasn't quite so engaging for delegates instead. But that's what COVID did for everybody. Next slide, please. So again, a lot of people will go through different iterations, and that's what we're saying at the beginning. It's that constant improvement. It's the learning, the testing, the failing, and doing it again. And that's what we've really found, and that's why we are where we are today. So we always look at what the platform can give us. We're actually on our third platform now for different reasons, but we're always looking at ways to how to improve delegates' experience. And we do that in numerous ways. There's in the moment feedback we get during the conference after the sessions, but we also send out surveys to delegates, but also to speakers and to our volunteers as well, just to get a full 360 view of how everybody felt about the conference itself. And that means that we're looking to see how things are running, if they're more smoothly, if we need any extra additional support every year, that kind of thing. And we also, because of these different platform providers, they've actually discovered they've managed to get some BA service pro bono. They've got some free BA service because we've always fed back to the platform providers themselves in the form of either requirements or user stories so that they can improve. And in fact, our current provider loved it so much, they've been working really closely with us and our technical leads to really try and see what extra benefits they could add to their platform, which would then benefit other customers as well as just us. So we really feel we've made a difference there. And then even iterating the name itself, we then found that we had delegates from 28 different countries last year. And so we felt, excuse me, the time was right to then expand it. We were no longer just looking at Edinburgh and Scotland and the north of England. And it's global, it's everywhere. But we're very lucky that the E still fits in with the name instead. So a year ago, Linda and I did a bit of a fun video to kind of launch the change of the name as well. So that's constant iterating that we found we're always doing. On to the next section, please.
Yep. So in this section, we're just going to be looking at looking at what we're doing for building internal processes. So we've developed a number of artifacts. Only some of them are represented on this slide. As you can imagine, with something that is so involved. Over time, we've developed procedures for just about everything and documented templates. We've got procedures for capturing details from speakers, sponsors, what we call associates. So when we do a hookup with James and IIBA Ireland or UK, there are associates, so people that we engage with. So we have templates for capturing details for them, procedures for capturing details for them, forms. We have contingency plans. We have support and backup processes. We have help and support processes for delegates. We have, you name it, we've got a procedure for it. And we also have a number of trackers. So here's an example of something that we're tracking this year. I've taken the names out just to protect the names of all our speakers at the moment, which you can find online. And so this is just tracking whether they've returned their details, what style of talk they're doing, and so on. But it keeps us on track as we're going through and gathering information about all our details. So, and that's all well and good, but over the last few years since the start, it's fair to say that we've spent the first few years being so busy doing BA life and bringing it to life and bringing it to delegates, that what we've done is just quickly documented the procedure and then through successive years either totally recreated that or updated it and kept it running. But we hadn't got to grips with formally collating all of those procedures into our single kind of how we do it here manual. So what we've started to do over the last couple of years is to start that process in earnest. And we work with a fantastic kind of army of volunteers, really. And they're all mostly BAs. And we've got them started on that journey of helping us document those processes formally so that we can hook up the process to the form, to the correct email template, so that Julia and I could walk away tomorrow and that whole process is fully formed and that someone else could pick it up. It's not that we are going to walk away, don't want any rumours being spread, but it's there so that those processes are set and can be picked up by people. We'll still keep iterating and improving as we go, but we just feel that all the time is right to have those procedures and processes fully documented, as we would do in any of our organisations that we all work for. And of course, that means that we're doing the things that BAs love to do, and that is working with process models and following those down to a level 5, which is your procedures. So true business analysis activity in practice. Before we go on to the next thing, I wonder if there's any questions from anyone, and we can take a few questions now. If not, we'll keep going and then take some questions at the end.
Been checking the Q&A, but there's nothing in there. There's some comments in the chat, but no questions.
Okay. Cool. You're up next anyway, Julia.
Yep. Go for it.
Oh, it's how we build an event from idea to fulfillment.
Yes. Now, I appreciate this is a very busy slide, and it's really just the classic roadmap diagram, but it's a very high-level summary of all the steps that we take. Right from the start in that bottom left corner, we've mentioned, we gather feedback, we do our research up to that helps shape the themes and the tracks that we're going to have for every year. That then helps us identify the speakers, and we go out to speakers to ask them to take part. We also approach sponsors as well. We've been very lucky to have some very supportive organisations over the years, which is wonderful. We also do the associates and affiliates. I did put in the chat, IIBA Ireland do have a discount code. If you haven't got it already, please contact James and he can send that to you as a member, and that will give you 10% off. So I just have to put that plug in there as well. In the background, there's things like the website needs updated, the actual virtual platform itself needs updated. All the way through this, we've got the social media campaign going on. So we're always racking our brains for new ideas to get things out there as well. And that feeds into the early bird sales in January. We always do something a bit more fun with that. We have a cheeky little chick, a little bird that pops up and does a funny wee dance every now and again. He keeps us sane. And then it's onboarding, it's testing, it's training, and getting everything. And at the same time, we're selling tickets. You know, we are trying to be a business, so we are trying to sell tickets. So whether that's individually, bulk, there's all sorts of processes that go to do with that, invoicing, bank accounts, different things. And then we land on the day itself, which is obviously huge. We have a lot of great fun for that as well. And then immediately after that, we kick off the feedback and it really loops back round again. So that's in a nutshell, really. Shall we go to the next slide?
Yep.
So as Linda explained at the beginning, we've got this acronym BA Life, but we really do feel that we help bring it alive. We help bring all our business skills alive, and we use them. And as we keep talking about, it's that feedback, it's that lessons learned, and that helps us keep reviewing things, examining things, seeing what else we can find and improve on. In the past, we've even run focus groups. We've done that with delegates, and we've also done it with sponsors as well. And that helps shape some of the themes or other areas that we could improve on. Also, just those softer skills we're always using to communicate, liaising, negotiating. It could be maybe even negotiating. We give thank you gifts to our speakers and negotiating with companies for good prices for things like that. But even working with our army of volunteers, we're building rapport, we're trying to be empathetic, we try and understand what's going on in their own lives and things as well. So we're always building on that and adding to all the soft skills as well. But all the time, we're always still learning and adapting our approach every year, I'd say, Linda.
Yeah, all the time. Because the only constant is change, and this changes so quickly with new ideas coming in, particularly with regard to what people want to learn. So we have to keep on top of the feedback and the lessons learned, and if needs be, or if it's not clear, the kind of focus group and the workshops for what delegates want to hear about.
Thank you. So that leads on nicely to looking at what kind of new skills have we learned as well. Thank you. So the big elephant in the room, we may have business in our job title, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we know how to run a business. So that's been a huge learning curve. Everything from what's needed just to keep the lights on, all the regular payments that need to go out, but learning about websites and the virtual platforms, marketing and sales techniques have been huge. Negotiating and influencing, a lot more to do with that. And also even things like banking and invoicing that I've mentioned as well. But when it comes to selling itself, this is something that maybe Linda and I have struggled with a little bit. I certainly say I'm a self-confessed, very proud introvert. And when you've got to put yourself out there to talk to strangers And although the speakers, there may be thought leaders out there, but we're always a bit in awe when we're trying to approach, the Fabrizio Lagunas of the world or the Laura Brandenburgs, the big names that are out there. It's quite difficult sometimes. So yeah, we've had to put ourselves out there and get them on board. But obviously, all BAs are lovely, aren't they? We're just lovely people. So of course it's easy to talk to them and things as well. But then you add sponsors into the mix. So you're going out to companies, you might not have any contacts with them, you're going on LinkedIn, trying to find a point of contact and things like that. So learning how to sell the company and the brand and what we're here to do, that's a whole different kind of level of things as well. So we find we've got to be very aware about what our brand is and what our vision is, and we try and sell that as well. But of course, with that, we're building the relationships and the trust. And I think that shines through in what we do. We can put our hands up. We don't always get it right. We're not afraid to say sorry, because that's who we are. And we know sometimes maybe working in your own organization, it doesn't always feel like that. But we think within the BA Life family, we've got very strong psychological safety. So we do have a lot of trust amongst the key management team and also the volunteers as well. But also things like running the podcasts. If you look back at some of the early ones, it's quite cringy. I've got a bit of a nervous tick. I kind of make a weird noise a lot. Sometimes I still do when I'm nervous. But it does, every time you do it, it's, as they say, the confidence comes from overcoming the fear. You've just got to put yourself out there, and then eventually you'll get better at it. And I think that's one of the key things that we've learned as well. And so being able to do something like this isn't in our comfort zone really, but we like to do it as well. And then things like, if you saw the post that went out on Monday on LinkedIn for International Women's Day, that was an unsanctioned post, I have to say. Our creative consultant did that behind our backs. We knew he was doing something, he was up to something, but we didn't know what. But the comments that have been put on it are genuinely lovely. And so many people have participated in it. So we feel we must be doing something right along the way. So that's been good to see as well. Next slide, please. And I love, James, that you're an introvert as well. Totally get it. But we thought we'd just pull out some of the key things that we feel that we've learned from BA Life that we're able to take back into a day job. And I think one of the key ones is the leadership side of things. Maybe in our day job as a BA, it's quite easy to kind of just be in the shadows. And you can still be leading from the shadows because you're role modeling, you're the glue that holds the team together. You know where everything is saved, you're the go-to person and things like that. But we felt with BA Life, we're very much thrust into the spotlight, like tonight. So it's given us a kind of a better awareness of the different styles of leadership that you might need as a BA. So when should you step up and when do you need to take a step back? So we feel as directors, we're very empowered to lead the way, but maybe not so much in the workplace. So it's knowing how can we make that balance and how to make that happen as well. And I think that's because we now have the confidence to actually question things, speak to people, deal with people. We know how to sell ourselves. We're not so frightened to fail. And because of that, psychological safety is stronger. I think that's quite a strong thing to have. Networking is a different category in its own right. A lot of people don't want to go to events because they don't necessarily feel comfortable in a strange environment and talking to people. But now Linda and I, we're a bit old fashioned. We do have business cards that we go around with, or we have our LinkedIn profile QR code ready on standby to connect with someone. And whether that's at events, whether that's even with colleagues, we're much happier at selling what BA Life is, and what even a BA does, because still so many people don't know what that is. Checking in, we felt, was quite an important one. Linda and I talk daily. We really do. And it's very much always about BA life, but obviously family and other stuff as well. But I think it's a really key skill to have at work as well. How often do you talk with your engineering leads, with your product owners, with your QE testing team? If you can build up that rapport with them and try and reach out to them and find out what did they do at the weekend, was it their birthday, different things like that. Those are the kind of management soft skills that, again, you're practicing a bit of leadership, but you're building up that trust within the team as well. So I think that's a really key one that we try and practice in our day jobs too. And then the last one, the marketing. Even simple little things. If you're trying to ask somebody for help, I didn't know this before, but don't just blurt it all out. Try and approach it a bit more softly. So if you're using Teams or Slack or something like that, ask them how their day is going first. Again, that's that building a rapport, building a bit of trust. Then you can kind of say, hey, do you have time to help me today? Don't tell them what it is. Just ask them if they're able to help, because usually they'll always say yes because they like you. So it's easy to say yes. Then you go in with this is what it's for. That's a well-known kind of marketing sales technique, but it's actually super useful to apply into the day job as well. And I use it quite a lot. So that was the section for that. Do you want to move on, Linda?
Yep. So we're just coming into a preview of BA Life 2026, a day packed full of BA goodness. And before I move on to that, I was going to pick up on one of the things that Julia said about checking in with people. So our keynote speaker is Michelle Tillis-Lederman, and her talk is about boost your likability, boost your, can't remember the
Influence.
influence. And it comes back to that kind of checking in. It's about the more people that you communicate with and you build that connection with, the more influence you have. And it's not a negative thing. It's just about liking other people and them liking you, and just understanding other people, understanding their moods, what drives them, but also understanding if they're okay that day. I mean, you don't know what's happening. They could have come into work because and had to leave a sick child at home, or so it's that kind of thing. But she's going to be pulling out some of those things for adding that communication to your everyday life. So I just thought I'd throw that in there because you brought that thing up.
Cool.
Anyway, back to the BA Life Day. So um, we think this is something to shout about. So we handpick our speakers. There's 35 handpicked speakers, and you get 12 months access to all of the recordings for the day. So, if you miss something on the actual day, you don't need to worry about it. We can only see so much live, but you don't miss a thing because you've got these recordings. You can watch things you saw on the day, or you can watch something new, but you get 12 months to do it. It's not like you have to watch them within the first 3 months. Um, there's 4 parallel tracks of presentations, which I'll come on and describe. And we also have a pre-event. So the conference itself is on the Thursday, but we open up the platform on the Monday before, and then there are different talks on each of those days. They're pre-recorded for logistical reasons, but they're quite interesting. I think this year we've got people like panel discussion with Kathy Burkage. We'll have something from Mark Bruins. So there's a lot going on the days before. There's 3 world-renowned keynotes. So one of them I've already mentioned, Michelle Tillis-Lederman. There is someone I'm super excited to see, which is Steph
Steph,
Wright,
right?
who is used to head up the Scottish AI Alliance, but she's a lead. She's in the Forbes top 100 speakers on AI ethics, so that's one not to miss. And then the other one is our good friend Laura Brandenburg, who is going to do the fireside chat, or as we like to call it, for those who are the same age as Julia and I, the Valdunican slot with our very own Julia. And it's all packaged up in one amazing festival in a day. And it's all happening on the 23rd of April. So the tracks. So there's the ethical BA. So this kind of came about because the feedback from last year was that we'd done a lot of AI topics at the last conference, and people wanted something about how to make AI good. So that led us down the track of ethical AI. But then when we started to talk about it and talk to other people, we're thinking, well, ethics doesn't just come in because it's AI. Ethics filters across all sorts of topics within the realms of the BA. So, and ethics was needed long before AI even came along. So, yes, in this track, there is a lot of AI influence, but there are other areas of BA ethics that are within this track. And also within there is some a great talk on sustainability as well, because these are areas that BAs can really influence to make the world a better place, not just AI. The human touch, this is a track we have every year, but this year it will focus in particular on now how can I say this? It's embracing sort of the learnings from our differences. So as a whole IT community, not just BAs, but BAs and UX in particular, have spent a lot of time focusing on improving IT really to accommodate accessibility and neurodiversity and our differences. But in doing so, we've made it better for everyone who needs to use IT. And we want to kind of highlight some of those things. And that's what this track is about this year. So you'll see a lot around teamwork and how teamwork includes people with differences, a lot about how we include neurodiversity, those kind of topics are included in there. Excuse me. And the other track is, oh, sorry about that, is tools and tech. And this kind of focuses on how the tools that BAs use um, or involved in developing are changing in this new sort of an emerging world. So what AI tools do we use? How do some of the modeling tools we are changing? So for example, we've got a panel discussion on what new tools do BAs use these days for process modeling, because Visio, I've spoken to several BAs over the last year or so, and hardly any of them use Visio anymore. So it's that kind of topic. So what are the new emerging tools that affect BAs at the moment? And then of course we've got a couple of workshops with some fabulous people. John Weisner is in one, and Emal is in the other from BA Blocks. So yeah, some great speakers and great tracks. I know that was a very fast whistle-stop tour of the tracks, but it's all on our website, which I'll share the link to later. So our speakers are hand-picked speakers. So those of you who know anything about BA Life will know that we don't put a call out for speakers. We search the world over to choose all of our speakers. They're industry leaders or intriguing people, and they have something interesting to say. And Julia and I, we sort of struggled with this because we asked the question, what are our favourite speakers for this year. And the truth is that we can't really say who our favourites are, apart from James, of course, because he's speaking at this year's conference. Goes without saying, James. Um, but actually, it's really, really difficult because we handpick our speakers, we've chosen them to match the themes that we've come up with. So it's quite, and we're unique in that way. So it's really, really difficult for us to choose our favourites. We've picked them specifically to suit the tracks. So we pleased with particular people that we've managed to catch? Yes, I mean, getting Steph Wright as our lunchtime keynote to talk on AI ethics. Yes, of course, that's a coup as far as we're concerned. But if we got her to speak at last year's, that wouldn't have suited because we weren't talking about AI ethics. So the speaker has to match the tracks and the themes of that conference. And that's what we're most pleased about. I think that's where we've got wins, is we've got the speakers to match the tracks. And the other big thing is that um, we're delighted every year because we meet so many fantastic people, and every year they become sort of, I suppose, business friends. We meet so many amazing speakers, and we get to chat to great people. I mean, this year's speakers, I think I've had conversations with all of them, and they're all lovely. And um, and the other thing for our delegates, the fact that these talks are recorded, it means that they can share in um, the information that they'll impart throughout the whole year, and they're not restricted just to seeing what they can um, manage on the day, which would be about six or so um, sessions. So yeah, so they'll miss nothing. And here are the details. So for more information, you can visit our website, and we have obviously our LinkedIn page, which has some of the What Would a VA Do episodes and lots of other information. We also send out lots of articles, and the conference is on the 23rd of April. If you haven't bought your ticket, then either persuade your company or, like Julia said, IIBA Ireland has a promo code, and it's fully virtual, so there's no travel costs, and there's a nice big QR code to our website there. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions or?
There's not been any in the chat. Let me just check the Q&A again. Nope, nothing in the Q&A.
Surprising, no BA has a question. I have a question.
Yep.
So since the event is feedback driven, how do you, I suppose, avoid like reacting to every suggestion that comes back from the feedback and instead focusing on the changes or feedback that matters the most?
Yeah, so we can't we can't react to every bit of feedback, because if we did, we'd probably always do career paths, or yeah, mostly would do career paths, or we would have done that for the last 3 or 4 years, since like contractor market has gone a bit, you know. But what we do try and do is, if something comes across as really, really popular and it doesn't appear in the tracks, then what we try and do is do something on our pre-event. So this year, so in the feedback last year, it was a good AI, which we've expanded to AI ethics. It was more about sort of neurodiversity. And the other thing that we're trying to do this year is move towards making the conference more neuro inclusive. So the speakers have got guidelines on that, and we're just experimenting. So we're only moving towards that. You'll know yourself, James, that you've got um, uh, speaker guidelines on how you to do your presentation. So we are just literally starting on that journey of moving towards. And then the other one was this sort of tools and tech. But the other thing that came out was, can we have some more on careers, which we do get asked quite a lot, but we'd done that last year as well. So what we have done is move that and asked our conference days, the talks in there, the pre-recorded talks are all to do with how BAs self-promote to move towards a good career recognition. So we do try and accommodate it, but we can't accommodate every single thing. The other thing we do is quite often we haven't needed to because there's been clear direction for the themes. But if it's really difficult, we'll hold some forums with delegates that are on the talk, and then we'll look at other avenues like what's happening in the world around us, what do other conferences think is going to happen, because we're quite lucky because we're the first conference of the year, so we can glean information from other avenues as well. So, but to be honest, the focus groups, I think we've only had to do it once or twice. So yeah, we don't get masses of feedback, but we get enough to generate the themes for the next year.
Yeah.
Can I add to that as well, Linda?
Yeah.
Just maybe a different angle to your question, James, the actual physical way of doing the prioritizing, to know what to choose. So we love going old school, big piece of paper on the table, all the volunteers in a room, and we write them down and good old marker pen and dots them. And the ones with the most dots end up getting sort of chosen, or we prioritize and rank them. Nowadays, we're kind of doing it using MS Forms, which then creates it into an Excel spreadsheet, which means that everybody can then access it because we've got volunteers also from all over the world. So getting everybody into rooms not always easy, but you can still do things, using it virtually to get everybody's collaboration and doing it on Miro and things like that, using Post-its. So we still like practicing good old-fashioned BA techniques to help with all the prioritizing as well.
I love that because if you think of it from a BA perspective, like if you're on a project or let's say you have a product and you have all these different requests coming in, you need to be able to, I suppose, find that balance using different techniques. So I love that you're constantly engaging and communicating with the different stakeholders, we'll say, that are giving the feedback, but then you're using traditional BA techniques to be able to get to that prioritization point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question for Linda or Julia or about BA life in general? Don't be shy.
Oh, yeah, I was put a question in the chat. What tips would you give to someone trying to enter the BA market? Ooh, I think it depends where you're working now or what your current role is. If you know a BA in your company, I would ask if you could job shadow them, try and understand a little bit more about their role. What does it involve? Because then if you do go to interview, at least you can say, yes, I've not done it, but I understand what it involves and maybe what the key parts and roles and responsibilities of a BA would be. Yeah, Linda, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout, Julia. And if you're that would also mean that if you're working in an organization, you job shadow someone. If you're then within a team or a department and you spot areas
Mm,
uh, where, for example, you identify processes that aren't quite right, you can always then suggest change to your manager because that goes some way to showing that you've got natural abilities for business analysis. I know one company where I worked at, we did grow your own programs, and what they did was they talent spotted people within business. One of the questions they asked is, have you demonstrated, where have you spotted issues in the way that your department does something and made changes to improve the process? And that's a good way if you have a natural inclination. I think one of the things we demonstrate in What Would a BA Do is the BA
mm,
mindset, and it's that natural ability to spot something that needs a process change or something.
mm,
I think the difference is if you're not working in those kind of environments, then maybe try and see if you can get on a a, a training course or something in IT that is more on that softer end of the skill spectrum within IT. It's so long since I did any school
mhm.
or college training. I don't know if there's any out there specifically, but if you're not in organizations, that would be another recommendation, those but more towards the softer end.
James, what would you say?
Yeah, so I'd say two different things. So IIBA, if you're looking to learn
Mm,
like the, let's say, core
Mm,
terminology or the different tasks that a BA might undertake within a project or a company, it's a great resource. If you're looking at the Babok guides, so the business analysis body of knowledge guides, and then separately, if you're based in like the UK, you have the BCS guides. That is also kind of similar. So that's a good starting point. And then even volunteering, like the likes with the BA Life team. I'm sure Linda and Julia would
yeah.
love to take you under the wing, and you can actually you'd be surprised like how much you can learn about what a BA would do. And even if you like map out a process or you're documenting requirements or even communicating and collaborating with different stakeholders, that's things you will do as a BA in real life. So if you get the kind of the grasps of that and you get confident doing that, then you can kind of build up like a portfolio. Although you're not working within a, let's say, official particular domain, you can use that as like leverage within the job market. So you're building up your BA skills, and then separately on top of that, Julia and Linda already mentioned, but training is a great thing to kind of validate those skills then.
I think that's a really good point, James, isn't it? Because it's understanding what are those transferable skills. You might not even realize that you're doing some of the jobs like a BA does
Yeah.
anyway. This is why we love doing the What Would a BA podcast. What would a BA do? Sorry, podcast. Because one of the classic ones could be, you know what you want to make for dinner tonight, and then you go and look in your fridge and you realize what's missing. What you're actually doing is going through a form of gap analysis. We just wouldn't say that. You know, you wouldn't say to your partner, say, oh, I'm just doing a bit of gap analysis while I'm looking in the fridge. You just don't say that.
Yeah.
But that's the thought process that you're going through instead. So, like Linda said, yeah, if there was a little niggle, a little irk, something at work that's really annoying you, just think of the problem statement and then what's the opportunity and then what are the steps that you would go through? Who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to get sign off? Do you understand the problem? Do you understand if you changed it, would it affect somebody else, either upstream or downstream? You know, and once you start logically kind of going through those steps, you don't need to know the fancy terminology, but you're thinking like a BA instead.
Yeah, fantastic advice.
Cool.
Okay. I think we've reached the end of our session, but thanks so much, Julia and Linda, for taking the time to present today. Really found this presentation really, really helpful and really interesting to see exactly how the BA skills applied to BA life and how you guys started and from idea to inception to actually what it is today. I'm looking really forward to April for the conference and to see how even BA life grows in the future. So thanks again.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having us,
James.
James. Thanks.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.